Hey, welcome to Brian for Liberty. Today I'm going to be talking about a story out of New York that illustrates the worst possible use of government, two stories out of LA, one showing hypocrisy and one showing bad economic decision making, a little bit of AOC, and to wrap it all up, am I finally going to wash my hands of the NFL? Stay tuned. All right, well, we're going to start with a story out of New York City, a place I have never had the pleasure of visiting. My wife is trying to get me to go up there. I really have no desire to travel to New York. We're going to talk about one of the worst possible uses for government, and we're going to discuss this in the shell of capitalism and the kind of the negative feedback that we're getting on capitalism, this anti-capitalist movement that is so prevalent amongst young people. It seems like this call for socialism, this call for, in many circumstances, communism, because capitalism is this broken, horrible system. There's all this consolidated wealth in one place and all these things that we're hearing. And I'm going to give you a small microcosm of why we don't live in a capitalist society, why we don't live in a free market, and what really is the worst possible use of government, and illustrate how disgusting and how dirty this stuff can actually be. So I'm going to bring you this story. This is from CNBC. Bodegas are looking to zoning laws to defend their turf against instant delivery startups. So quick commerce services exploded in New York City last year with roughly half a dozen startups promising online grocery purchases delivered in as little as 10 to 20 minutes. Sounds like a great service. Some elected officials and small business leaders worried that delivery startups could eventually push out bodegas and corner stores. This is not something for politicians to worry. Elected officials shouldn't be worrying about whether these entities are going to push out bodegas. It is not the job of an elected official to worry about what the consumer preference is going to be down the road. That is for the market to determine. The fact that we say elected officials are concerned about this right out of the gate tells you that we've strayed so far from what a free market economy is supposed to be. It's ridiculous. And bodegas trying to use zoning laws to protect their turf is essentially them going to government and paying protection. This is like the mafia. Because this is how this stuff works. The bodegas are concerned. The bodega owners are going to go where? They're going to go to their local elected officials, and they're going to start bringing this stuff up. They're going to start snitching on these places. They're going to start calling on these places. Hey, these places are in violation of zoning, and they're going to expect government to come in and shut down their competition. And these elected officials are only going to do this because the bodega owners, and please, when you think of bodega owners, I know you're thinking these are small business owners. There's a big association. There's money behind bodegas, just like there's money behind these startups. These associations are going to go. They're going to pay government officials to come down and shut out their competition. And when we talk about consolidation of wealth, and we talk about, this is a tiny little example of what goes on. When you see big corporations and you see big government regulations coming down on corporate America, it is not for you. It is not for the consumer's benefit. It is to protect already existing entities from competition. New York, reading on, how New York regulators respond to the rapid delivery grocers could have implications for other cities as the quick commerce sector expands across the U.S. This is a new industry that's cropping up. Would you have wanted government regulators to stop Amazon from growing and competing with other entities? Or are we glad now that we have this other outlet? And I'll tell you something, the growth of Amazon is why you can now get food delivered and anything delivered from Walmart, from Target, from all these other retailers, is because Amazon was taking their business with their online model. And so these other industries had to adapt to meet that demand. All good for the consumer. Now imagine if Target and Walmart and these other retailers had gone to the government and said, they're literally just saying, we can't compete with this service, so you should stop it. That's what they're doing. And that does nothing but harm the consumer. And there's no business, government has no business stopping a new industry from rising up. It's called creative destruction. New industry rises up and old industry goes by the wayside. And it's sad for some people in the old industry, and you have to adapt, and you have to learn new things. But we didn't stop computers from being developed because we wanted to protect typewriter salesmen and typewriter manufacturers. Those people don't have jobs anymore. But I think the country's better off that we didn't protect the typewriter industry from the computer industry and from the word processing industry. So grocery delivery startup, GoPuff, last fall moved into the ground floor retail space of a new luxury apartment building on the Lower East Side of Manhattan across the street from a bodega. I didn't really think it was going to be a big deal for us. We have our loyal customers in the neighborhood, said Jose Tavares, who has worked at Stop One Deli for 10 years. Later, Tavares looked up the company, so here we go. This is the rich versus the poor. The company GoPuff is valued at $15 billion as of July and could reportedly be valued as much as $40 billion after its latest funding. It's going to change something, Tavares told CNBC, because these companies have an advantage because they have money behind them, because the bodegas don't have any money. As we continue through the story, we get small business impact here. It says small business leaders are calling attention to zoning regulations because they say they can't compete with venture funding. They're not saying anything about a negative impact. They're not saying that the stores are bad for the environment. They're not saying anything negative about the businesses themselves. They're simply saying we can't let this happen because we can't compete and we need government to intervene on our behalf. That's not government's role. And that is the most anti-capitalist. We're going to stop this new business from rising up. Now, we are losing customers, said Francisco Marte, founder of the Bodega and Small Business Administration and Small Business Association and a Bronx bodega owner at a news conference on January 9th. They have a lot of money, which we do not have access to. This is the new world. The new world is venture capital. The new world is, and look, these are small, hyper-local businesses. This isn't some grand, these businesses are open to retail shoppers in the neighborhood. They're local. They're employing local people. This is a transition. This is a better service that's being provided for the consumer, and therefore the bodegas are losing business to them. That's how these things work. And getting government to step in and change what's going on, this is how you get crooked politicians. So this is a very small level, although it's New York City. But it's not national right now. This is a local, this is a New York, this is a city issue, right? So it's not national yet. But when you think about this on a national scale, this is this is how special interests spend money to buy politicians to protect them from competition. And we get sold this idea that big businesses don't like regulation, when in fact big business loves regulation. They write the regulations and they do it to protect themselves from competition. And then they sell us, the public, on why it's so important. Look at this person here, he's going to lose a job, so on and so forth. And it's what makes it harder for you to start a business. It's what makes things more expensive for you. It's why politicians don't answer to you, because they answer to the people who are spending money to protect their industry. And what's going to happen is eventually these venture capitalists and these small delivery services are, because they have venture capital, they'll probably end up outbidding the bodegas for political support. And what you'll see is these stores will disappear, and so will the bodegas. But that's it. It's commerce. It's capitalism to the highest bidder, and that's wrong. That's a broken system. That's the problem we have with modern capitalism. That's the problem we have with our system here in the United States, which isn't really capitalism. It is corporate oligarchy, Mussolini's definition of fascism, whatever you want to call it. But it's just wrong, and you can see how this stuff operates when you look at it at a smaller micro scale. And we saw the same thing years ago when Uber and Lyft first came onto the scene, and the taxi drivers were protesting because they wanted to protect their industry from this new service that was coming in and competing with them at a lower cost. So this is the kind of stuff we have to watch out for. This is the kind of thing that we got to make sure our politicians aren't getting involved in, because it's not their place to regulate and determine who gets to succeed in the marketplace. All right, and now let's get on to a new piece of insanity, which is coming out of LA. This is the kind of thing that drives me nuts, because people are so passionate about this topic, and they will defend the people they believe in to the exclusion of their own friends and family, people who love them, people who care about them. We will defend these people above those people who are close to us in our own lives. We will miss out on family events. We will forego experiences because these people are to be trusted and believed, and this is what they're telling us we need to do. And then what we get is this kind of nonsense, where you have Garcetti saying he held his breath because he got busted taking maskless photos at an NFL game. Look, let's get through the article. Days after facing criticism for being photographed maskless at Sunday's Rams 49ers playoff game, Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti has offered an explanation. He was holding his breath. I mean, this is Clinton 2.0, I didn't inhale all over again. I think we should focus on what's real, Garcetti said at a SoFi Stadium news conference Wednesday. I wore my mask the entire game, and when people ask for a photograph, I hold my breath. There's a 0% chance of infection from that. All right. First of all, I don't think anybody believes that this guy's holding his breath every time he gets a photo op. I don't think that's happening. I don't think people are stupid enough to believe that. Maybe some of them are, but for the most part, I don't think people are stupid enough to believe that. What really bothers me is the 0% chance of infection. Well, this was my problem with masks right from the get-go when they started talking about wearing masks. Let me give you a little background here. When this first started, my wife and I were all in. Stocked up the house, didn't leave for weeks. We were primary providers for her parents. So, we wanted to make sure that our risk was as low as possible. So we were all in. And when I went out in public, I wore gloves, like surgical gloves, because they reminded me to not touch my face. The guidance to not touch your face made a lot of sense to me because you're transmitting germs from a surface to your face. So I wore gloves to make sure that I remembered not to touch my face. Then they came out and said everybody should wear masks. And my first thought on this was, most people aren't going to wear their masks. Let me get this distracting video off the screen here. Most people aren't going to wear their masks properly. And you saw it right out of the gate. People were, they had their noses out or they kept taking the mask off. I've seen people literally take their masks off to cough and then put their mask back on. So the whole mask thing is, the efficacy of masks is largely dependent on the quality of mask you're wearing and whether you're wearing it properly. And I don't think a lot of people wear it properly. The second problem with masks that I had was it encourages you to touch your face. It encourages you to constantly take it off and on. There's no benefit to wearing it if you're constantly taking it off, putting it back on, taking it off, putting it back on. You're increasing your chances of getting infected, and you're taking potentially your COVID virus in the mask and putting it on other things. So wearing a mask actually encourages a very bad behavior when it comes to how transmissible this virus is. Now, we come to find out later that doesn't live on surfaces a lot, but the guidance on masks seemed very similar. And this is a perfect example of, well, I took it off. That means there's no chance of infection. That's ridiculous. You're touching your face again. And the idea that I held my breath when there were photo ops, it just blows my mind. Photos surfaced Sunday of Garcetti and others at the Inglewood Stadium where attendees are required to wear masks to help protect against coronavirus transmission. Another stupid thing. Let's all put on masks and then cram 75,000 people into a stadium. Can we just be honest about that? This is just something for the sake of visibility. This is an optic, not an actual. There's nothing scientific about cramming 75,000 people seat to seat next to each other, taking their masks off to drink beer, to eat food, and then slipping them back on. There's nothing scientific about. That's the dumbest, and they're just doing it. I don't care how terrified you are of the virus. I don't care how anti-vaxxer you are. You can't, as an intelligent thinking person, you can't believe that makes scientific sense to put 75,000 people in a stadium, constantly removing and putting their masks back on, and go, we're doing this to reduce transmissibility. Come on, people. We got to start being a little bit more logical. I mean, come on. We got to be a little bit more logical than this. Hanging out at SoFi Stadium today, Johnson wrote in the tweet showing several maskless fans. I'm assuming all those maskless fans were also holding their breath. I guess that's the take you have to get. That's what you have to get from it. Garcetti was also on screen on the field of SoFi Stadium without a mask, and images posted on his official Twitter account. The reason I'm making kind of a big deal out of this, the reason this bothers me so much is because we've seen it over and over again. We just saw AOC out in Florida partying. We saw Nancy Pelosi in the early stages of the pandemic out getting a haircut. Mayor Lightfoot in Chicago going out and getting her hair. And all these people who are telling us, who are the marketers of the fear, who are ordering businesses to be closed, who are creating mandates, out violating that. And I'm not angry about it because they think they're better than us. I'm angry about it because they're not following their guidance, because they don't believe what they're actually telling you. That's the worst part. When I go back to what I said earlier about people missing funerals and weddings and not seeing their families and foregoing these experiences and these events, and old people dying alone in retirement homes because their kids aren't allowed to see them, while these people are out breaking their own rules because they don't believe what they're telling you. Because if they did, they would behave accordingly. You go online, do your own searches. I try not to plug a bunch of information. You go online and do your own searches for the optic stuff, for Democrats caught taking mask off camera. And it's going to blow your mind. They put the mask on, they get the pictures taken, they take the mask. I mean, it's all optic. And we're all bought into this thing. And it angers me to no end, as you can tell. And that's why I wanted to point out this is just a latest story of yet another leader saying this is what we need to do, stop the spread, keep people safe, blah, 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 violating his own rules, going to an NFL football game with a stadium full of tens of thousands of people and pretending like they're actually doing something there to reduce the spread. So since LA is on my mind right now, let's get into another ridiculous Los Angeles story. This one completely off topic from the virus. I try not to talk about the pandemic too much. Someday I hope to be a big enough channel to be monetized, and I would hate for all of my videos to have this in it and get demonetized if that ever would happen. I don't know if it will. I'm growing very slowly, but of course I'm not putting up a ton of content either. But I hope you guys will. I'm going to edit that out. So here we go with more bad economic decision making. And so we're going to swap this in here. Los Angeles, LA's minimum wage to rise to 16.04 in July. Los Angeles hourly minimum wage will rise from 15 to 16.04 on July 1st, officials said Thursday. The city's wage is tied to the Consumer Price Index as published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, which has risen steadily over the last 7 years following a push by city leaders to boost the hourly rate and curb poverty. Raising the minimum wage doesn't do anything to curb poverty. Read any book on economics. All it does is pushes low-income people. It creates a barrier for entry into the workforce, closes small businesses. It doesn't do anything to reduce poverty. It just doesn't. At $1 an hour in LA, $16 an hour in LA makes no sense at all. It's a horrible financial decision. It's just another terrible example of bad economic policy. On January 1st, California's minimum wage rose to $15 for employees with 26 or more with 26 or more employees. That's very small businesses are being forced to pay. And what you're doing is you're forcing entrepreneurship and small businesses out of LA. And my wife just came back from a visit. I had no desire to go to Los Angeles either. I hate these. I was spent 9 years in the Navy. I've been in big cities. I don't have a need to go there. And she couldn't believe the smell. She said the whole city smelled like urine and pot. And the homeless and the tent cities and the horrible, these are all the results of horrible economic decisions. And minimum wage is just one of those many bad decisions. And it just goes to show that this kind of leadership, this kind of economic decision making, these major cities are dying. They're turning into pits. And I'm going to talk in my next video. Please like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. My next video is going to be very specific about major cities and the welfare system and why this is kind of a more nefarious view of why the welfare system came into existence in the first place, or why it still exists today. And I want to talk about that. And that's going to be in my next video. It's not going to be so headline driven. There'll be a few headlines, but more I want to talk about that specific thing. And then on to the next thing. We're going to kind of rapid fire through some of these deals. Another AOC. AOC says capitalism is not a redeemable system, while Biden says he will work with Congress to make it better. Government can't make capitalism better. They are the ones who destroy capitalism. And I don't like the phrase capitalism. And AOC actually makes a pretty good point in this, and talking about free markets and capitalism are not the same thing. And that's 100% accurate. We don't have free markets in the United States. We have a corporate oligarchy. We have corporations buying politicians in order to protect themselves. This goes back to the bodega conversation we had earlier in the video. So for her to say, yeah, capitalism and free markets are two different things, that's very true. If the government would just get its way out of the way of entrepreneurship, the government would just get itself out of the way of entrepreneurs and let small business be the economic driver it's meant to be, and stop protecting big business and big corporations, yes, the world would be a much better place. Biden's talking about jobs recovery following the Bureau of Labor. So Friday we had a really good jobs report, 467,000 new jobs. I would say we still have less people working than before the pandemic. So until we have more people working than before the pandemic, this isn't economic growth. This is economic recovery from a government mandated shutdown of the economy. But here's Biden. Look, I'm a capitalist, Biden said, and capitalism without competition is not capitalism and exploitation. It's 100% right. So I'm going to continue to do everything in my power to work with Congress to make our capitalist system work better, provide more competition, and lower prices for American consumers. The only way for the government to do those things is to get uninvolved, get themselves out of the economy, deregulate to the greatest possible extent, get out of the way of entrepreneurship, eliminate the corporate tax. Yes, we shouldn't have a corporate tax at all. Our corporate tax rate should be 0. I'm more than willing to defend that in the comments section. And let competition. That's how competition happens. Government doesn't create competition. Government quelches, or government destroys competition, essentially. Government prevents competition. Every regulation, every tax is a roadblock for competition to enter the marketplace. He did not detail exactly how he will work with Congress, but as the wealth gap persists and lawmakers continue to push big corporations to pay their fair share in taxes, Biden has made clear reforms are needed. I'm so sick and tired of corporations and the fair share nonsense. It's a garbage argument for garbage intellect. I'm going to say this. You'll hear me say this over and over and over again, wherever you follow me, whether it's TikTok, here, Instagram, whatever you follow me, you'll hear me say this. Corporations don't pay taxes. Consumers pay taxes, all taxes. Corporations don't pay their electric bill. They don't pay the wages. Corporations don't pay for everything. Consumers of their goods pay for all the things, right? And saying that you want taxes to be higher is the same thing as saying I want their electric bill to be higher. All that means is you want to pay more for the goods you buy at the store. That's why there should be no corporate taxes. Let's tax directly to at the individual level. Taxation is theft. I would abolish all taxation, but that's neither here nor there. Corporate taxes don't make any sense, and we have to make people understand that, because it's an indirect theft of your money that you're not even seeing it. The corporate tax rate is another way to tax money that's already been taxed. So anyway, that I wanted to get into that. And then last but not least, and this, look, I'm not making a vow or anything, but I am saying I am very close, very, very close to being completely done with the National Football League. Completely done. And it's not this, look, when they got all woke, it bothered me, but I let it go. I'm a fan. I've been a Packer fan for a long time. I like watching the games. I like talking to my son about the games. But it's just getting, all right. 49ers fan beaten into a coma outside of SoFi Stadium. What in the, I don't even have to read this story. What is going on in the world? We are getting this idea. Sports have gotten out of hand. I honestly, I think I might just start going to local high school games and rooting for the kids to play. I mean, the NFL, the passion, the history, the legacy, the fathers and sons playing football together and baseball together and all that's all great. But it has gotten, honestly, this is bread and circuses from the Roman Empire. It's just another stupid indulgence to keep us distracted from what's going on a day-to-day basis in this country. Billions of dollars of subsidies to build multi-billion-dollar NFL stadiums on the taxpayers' dime to help. It's essentially a subsidy for billionaires. It's the whole thing has just gotten to the point where it's $130 million contracts for NFL players, and meanwhile they've got this woke message. They're fighting to get billionaires subsidized to build multi-billion-dollar stadiums so rich people can go spend their money watching a sport. Because realistically speaking, the lower portion of the income scale in the United States can't really afford to go to football games, not on any kind of regular basis. So we're subsidizing billionaires to make them more money. We're paying these athletes who are, by and large, just terrible examples and role models. It's just, I'm kind of just over the whole thing. As a big Packer fan, I watched the Packers lose to San Francisco and the whole Aaron Rodgers drama and all that off-season nonsense. And I'm just like, I feel like I did after I watched Endgame, where I'm kind of just, I've enjoyed the Marvel Universe and this is great. And after Endgame, I haven't watched another Marvel movie. I kind of feel like Aaron Rodgers is going to leave Green Bay. I've done the Brett Favre era, the Aaron Rodgers era. I've had a ton of fun, and I'm kind of like, all right, I think I might be done with this. I wanted to close on something light like the NFL. I hope you enjoyed the video today. Please like, share, subscribe, leave me a comment. in the section. It helps a lot with the algorithm, trying to grow the channel. Again, my goal for 2022 is to get to 1,000. And I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I do want to do something for my first 1,000 subscribers, particularly those who have engaged me in the comments section. So I haven't come up with anything yet. That's off in the future at some point. But like, subscribe, share the content if you really enjoy it. And you can follow me here. You can follow me on TikTok, Brian for Liberty. I'm also getting a little bit more active on Twitter, Brian_for_Liberty on TikTok on Twitter. I hope to see you there. Hope to see you here. And thanks again for stopping by.